back to another week of online One Youth. It has been so cool. This past week, we were actually able to gather and meet in person. We had districts this past week, and hey, if this is your first time joining us today, or if this is your first time hearing about us, please join us. If you're in middle school or high school, or you just graduated, please come join us every Wednesday from 7 to 8:30 at Districts Live. We would love to have you. Hey, today we are starting a individual series for the next 2 weeks. We're going to be doing something completely different than the quarantine collection, and also different than the comeback culture. And what I want to talk to you guys about today is almost something that's kind of going on in the world at this moment, with all of the racial injustice, with all of the things going on with all your friends on social media, all this stuff that we don't even have the answers to, but we have so many questions. And man, I was like, man, I think that it's time for me to address it. I think it's time for us to talk about it. So hey, today the title of my message is this: Wind, Waves, and What in the World is Going On. Wind, waves, and what in the world is going on. And we're going to be reading from the book of Matthew today in chapter 14. And we're going to be reading from verses 22 to 32. And I'm reading from the Message because it's like, man, this puts it how I would try to tell somebody in my own words. And so it says it like this. You should see it on your screen as well. As soon as the meal was finished, Jesus insisted that the disciples get in the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the people. With the crowd dispersed, he climbed the mountain so that he could be by himself to pray. He stayed there alone late into the night. And meanwhile, the disciples were in the boat, and it was far out to sea. So when the wind came up against them and they were battered by the waves, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. That's crazy, right? They were scared out of their wits. A ghost, they cried, crying out in terror. But Jesus was quick to comfort them. Courage, it's me. Don't be afraid. Peter, suddenly bold, spoke out and said, Master, if it's really you, call me to come to you on the water. And he said, come ahead. Jumping out of the boat, Peter walked on the water to Jesus. But when he looked down at the waves churning beneath his feet, he lost his nerve and started to sink. He cried, Master, save me. Jesus didn't hesitate. He reached down and grabbed his hand. Then he said, faint heart, what got into you? Or as some other versions of the Bible say, you have little faith. Why did you doubt? The two of them climbed into the boat, and the wind died down. Pray with me. God, thank you so much for this time. Thank you so much that we get to just be with each other. God, thank you that things are loosening up and we get to be in each other's physical presence, God, just as much as we are spiritually or emotionally or mentally. God, we are so grateful that you have brought us through this time, God, but we have other things to address now. God, I pray that as I speak, God, that your word goes forth and mine does not. God, whatever you want to say happens, and whatever I want to say falls to the back. God, we love you so much, and I thank you for the wind. I thank you for the waves, and for what in the world is going on. We're about to find out. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Hey, so when I was looking to what to talk about this week, the only thing that comes up on my timeline, the only thing that comes up on my news feed, it's no longer coronavirus. It's no longer quarantine. It's everything about the Black Lives Matter movement. It's everything about the racial injustice and the all of the protests. And maybe you guys have some friends that have been going out and protesting. And personally, like, you know, that's awesome that you're right. Like, I believe in that 100%. But I feel like a lot of times we get so emotionally, we get so mentally, we get so involved. And we start to form opinions, and we start to form bases of thought off of what we know. And we start to form them based off of who we are or what we are. And there's so much division in the world today. There's so much division in our youth. There's so much division in America. And we go from being this country united by a pandemic. I would even take it further. We go from an entire world united by a pandemic to a world or a nation divided by racism. And we look here in this story and we're like, Jake, how can you even relate the two things? How can you even make sense of anything? And the reality of it is that are three things that happen in this passage, and it's in the title of my message. But the first thing I want to talk to you about today is called the wind. It's called the wind. And the thing is with the wind, some other versions of the Bible actually talk about it, but in this version we do not see the wind mentioned. And I was looking up and I was researching storms, and I was researching storms on the ocean. If you guys have ever seen videos or movies about how storms are portrayed in the ocean, it is absolutely horrifying, absolutely terrifying. I mean, like I'm like kind of scared of the ocean, like a little bit. But like if you're on a boat, like even a humongous boat in the middle of the ocean, and there's a storm happening, and those waves get like, they look like tsunamis, and they're like overtaking the boat and crashing through the boat. And at times when the boat is taken over, like I'm just like, that is insane. Like, why would you even be out there, like if you know there's a storm? And I'm sitting there wondering, I was like, there's wind and there's waves, and then the question that we ask is, what in the world is going on? But I believe that there was a process to get into that question at the end. And the first thing that happens in that process is the wind. And so when I was looking up why the storms happen, and for all of my science freaks out there, all of my nerds, you guys know better than I do. But what happens is there is a violent wind. There is a violent thing that we cannot see, but we can experience. And what I want to categorize the wind as today is as the wind is the underlying problem. The wind is the underlying problem. You know, for a lot of us today, maybe the underlying problem is being so isolated that you feel lonely because you've been in quarantine. Maybe for some of us today, it's feeling that anxiety inside of you because you have no longer the ability to control anything in your life. Maybe for some of us, it's the fear that you missed out on too much stuff. So now you have the ability to control something again. So your fear is acting out, your fear is lashing out. And so there's an underlying problem, and I want to categorize it as the wind. Because so many times we reach places, or we reach points in our lives where we get to a place where we ask, what in the world is going on? And the question that we should be asking is, where in the world is this coming from? And the origin of most problems is the wind. The origin of most things that inhibit us or hurt us in our life is the wind. It is the underlying problem that we do not address. It is the problem that cripples us and comes and attacks us and makes us somebody different than we were created to be. And when it comes to the wind, is that when we look at it, the real issue is that it's something that we don't even realize. It's something that we don't even see. And oftentimes, this is the crazy part. The wind is the thing that causes the physical reaction that we are experiencing. You see, without the wind, there are no waves. Without fear, there's no lashing out. Without anxiety, there is no isolation. Without, let's just continue. The list can go on and on, because with every single problem that we experience in our life, there has to be a foundational thing that's going on inside of us. For the first thing, it's the wind. And the next thing is the waves. The waves are the actual issue that we see. So we see the issues that we see going on today is a human being kneeling on another human being's neck and killing that person. And the issues that we see today is that until people spoke up, that nothing happened. And the issues that we see today, it goes on and on, but we see so many issues, but we do not address the actual issue at the foundation of these people's lives. And I'm gonna be straight up and tell you this, is that I see people all over my timeline that's saying blue lives matter, that are saying black lives matter, that are saying all lives matter. And the reality of it is that Jesus was not associated to a specific political party. He was not associated to one certain type of movement. He was associated to people. Jesus was associated to love. Because when Jesus saw oppression, he stepped in. When Jesus saw wrongdoing, he stepped in. When Jesus saw people coming at somebody for committing a sin, he stepped in. And so we see all these physical issues and we see all these things happening in our world today, and we're saying, oh, it's this, or oh, it's that. And I can tell you right now what it is. It is a sin issue. It is a wind issue. But all we see are the waves. All we see are the effects. The thing with the waves is that it is a lot of things. It is relatable. It is tangible. And other people can see and experience it too. So the waves can make us pick something. And we look at in this story, what happened is Peter picked something. And I'm so grateful for Peter. And like, this is actually a story that was the thing that got me called into ministry. So this story has so much meaning in my life. So when I speak about it, I have so much passion because I believe that this story has so much power. The Bible is so alive, and I tell you guys this almost every Sunday. It is so relatable, it is so real, it is so relevant. That's because God breathed life into it. And I believe God wants to breathe life into you today. He wants to show you that, hey, there are so many issues going on, but we have to recognize the wind for what it is, and we have to look at the waves and say, you won't be a wave without the wind, and I know who created the wind, and I know who created the water in which the waves come from. I know who did that. But so many times we're like Peter. We get excited and we get emotional and we have this experience and we have this thing and we get out and we get excited and we say, Jesus, if it's you, tell me to come. And when we get out, we get distracted. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar from getting out of something and becoming distracted? We were just in quarantine. You just had so much time to build something. You just had so much time to grow. And when you come out, you get distracted. When America came out, they got distracted. We were a unified world for maybe the first time I've ever seen in my life. When humans actually cared about other humans. And we come and we get to this place where the wind and the waves come and we get distracted. And you know what happens when we get distracted? We fall. We fall. And man, I want you guys to know is that every time we fall, there's somebody there to pick us up. And this brings me to my third and final point. The question probably a lot of you are asking, what in the world is going on? And I believe a lot of times we ask this question, we do not get the answer. We don't get the answer. But I believe that there are certain things that happen when we ask this question. And when I list these points, I think of Peter when I say this. When we ask what in the world is going on, what we're actually saying is that we have a lack of trust in our Creator. When Peter jumped out onto the water, he heard that it was Jesus, but when he got out there and he started experiencing things, he lost his sight, he lost his focus, he lost his perspective. He started focusing on things that he could no longer control. And he stopped looking at the person that could control them. You see, when we get to this point, when we step out, Pastor Mark just talked about it last week, when we step out in faith, when we step out into something that we have no idea what's going to happen, we have to go and we have to realize that the same God who brought us out before is going to bring us out again. The same God who brought unity before is going to bring unity again. The same God who brought peace before is going to bring peace again. The same God who freed slaves then is the same God who's going to free slaves now. We have to realize that we're stepping out with the same God who was then, who was now, and who will be forever. We have to know that what in the world is going on is that the person who created everything has a purpose for it. He has a rhyme and a reason for every wind and every wave. You think coronavirus caught God off guard? Heck no. You think this whole America being divided thing caught God off guard? Heck no. But God has a rhyme and a reason. And man, there has been so much injustice in this country. And what if God's rhyme and reason is bringing awareness to it and bringing legit, actual change? God has a rhyme and a reason for every wind and every wave. And we see it and we're like, oh, that's a storm. Don't go into it. But can I tell you something? Peter would not have walked on water if he did not go into the storm. Sometimes we're at church and we preach that storms are always bad. Can I tell you something? Is that when you go into a storm, you always leave stronger. Maybe not like this, but in this. Maybe in this. Maybe in the way that you spiritually live. Like, I don't know about you guys, but during this whole time without seeing One Youth or seeing people at church, like my spirit, I was like, I have been spoiled. I need my people. I need my kids. I need to see them. I need to be with them. And so I came out of this time stronger. I came out with a different perspective. I came out with a different vision. I came out seeing things different. There is a rhyme and a reason for every single wind and every wave. But can I ask you this? Who do you look to when these storms come? Do you look to Twitter? Do you look to Instagram? Do you look to your parents? Do you look to your family members? Do you look to your friends? Because I want to be straight up with you. I'm not saying that any of them are wrong. But if it does not line up with what the Word of God says, how much weight does it actually have? Because I think that if we focus on what everybody else says, we're the same as Peter. We focus on the waves, and we can feel the wind, and we can get a little unsteady, and when we start to look at other things more than we look at the one who created those things, we lose focus and we fall. What in the world is going on? Are we looking at the Creator or the creation? Man, I believe that God has a powerful plan for us. This is the perfect time for the church of God to stand up. This is the perfect time for the youth of America to stand up and say, hey, we're different. We're not going to stand for this anymore. And it's not because we're going to go along with social media trends. It's not because we're going to go along with protecting certain people. It's not because we're going along with what the world is doing. It's because we want to enact legitimate, certain change. And can I tell you something? The only person that can ever change anything is Jesus Christ. Man, like, be emboldened this week, man. Go out there and be different. Go out there and be something new. Offer a different perspective. Because that is what God has called you to do. Walk out on the water when everybody else is staying in the boat. You were called for more. You were called for more. One Youth, I love you. YouTube, I love you. But you are called for more. There's wind, there's waves. And what in the world is going on? God, thank you for this time. God, I pray for all my friends that joined me today, God, and the ones that will see this in the future. God, I pray that you go with us, God, that you embolden us, that you enable us, that you help us walk on the water, God. You help us do the things that are hard to do. You help us have conversations that are hard to have. You help us relate with people that are hard to relate with, God. You help us be in relationship with people that are hard to be in relationship with. God, only true change comes through you, through relationship with you. And God, if we can impact somebody like you have impacted us, that is what we want to do during this whole time. God, we love you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thanks for joining us. See you guys next week.